Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm going to do another cosmic adventure about because I did a video involving the Cross Time Kangs, but I realized there's a character introduced in the next story with the Kangs, Cross Time Kangs, that you won't know if you don't get to see the character in this. So I don't know. It'll be fun to do, and then it's going to lead to a bunch of other videos, right? So let's see what we can do, right? So let's see, what are we doing here? Not that. So this is the start of the Nebula versus the Skrulls sort of saga, right? And the Avengers, of course, are caught in the middle. All right, so this story is going to lead into the next Cross Time King, but Nebula is going out for all the marbles, right? So we're going to start this story here. It's going to bleed into a couple other issues, but we're only going to look at the subplots, right? So in this issue, the Captain Marvel has been sent off into deep space to Sanctuary 2, which was actually Thanos's ship that had all this terrible stuff on it, right? So that's where we're at. You see her in space. She's traveling. She makes it to the Sanctuary 2, right? And it's called A Legacy of Thanos, right? When she gets there, there's nothing really going on here. So she contacts the Avengers, but at the same time, the Avengers, the Vision is going crazy, right? The Vision going crazy trying to cause world peace by taking over the world computer and solving some things, but the Vision, of course, it's going to be revealed in this story, right? So they Pentagon is dealing with this, right? So the Vision has been apologizing to everybody, and the government want to debrief Vision. So he's very apologetic, but the Avengers are surprised, but they're not really upset about this, right? They're kind of nonchalant. Vision is their friend, and the government has been very serious about this. Now, behind the scenes, I'm not sure how Roger Stern planned to handle this, but he planned the government to do something. But the government couldn't do anything because this was going to be Scarlet Witch and Vision's exit for their miniseries. So instead of bogging them down with, whatever punishment the government was going to give them, they allowed Vision and Scarlet Witch to exit the team. As long as they weren't Avengers and next to their computers, they didn't have to fall under the Pentagon. That's how this thing netted out. But we'll see there's a bunch of pages where the Vision is just remorseful, and this is kind of the trick on how people read comics and forgive things, where they don't forgive like something like well, they forgive like who is it, Sandman, or with a Rogue. That okay, I was a little remorseful. But they're not really. Redemption leads into feeling that I did wrong. Now, a lot of people feel wrong, like the Phoenix, but people say you can't go that far, right? So let's keep going, right? So they go through overview. Vision is taken over, but at the same time, he takes out this crystal, and that keeps him from going crazy for some reason, right? And they start to talk to him about stuff, and the Avengers have no real thing. But then Captain Marvel says, "I'm here," and he said, "Well, I only did that to get you out of the equation. I want to get all the Avengers away so I could take over the world computers and no one would notice." Right? So Cap is like, "Get back as soon as you can." But while she's there, a vessel docks that she doesn't know is docking it. Right? So she's there. She sees all those weapons of mass destruction, and we see someone creeping up on her. And this guy, I think is Grunge. He attacks. Scrunge is Scrunge. Scrunge attacks. He's a troll, And there's a bunch of characters that are connected to other Marvel characters like Pip the Troll, and we're going to see a few others, but I don't know where they originally originated from. But right, Captain Marvel takes this guy apart pretty quickly, and soon meet Cool, who's this sort of thing-like creature, and she makes short work of him too. But then this other character, Gunther, she's from a Rigel colony, right? And then we also have Levin, right? And these guys are coming in. They just need some help. They just want some help to get to their next destination, and they're hoping that Captain Marvel can help them. So she's like, "All right, but she's gonna keep an eye on them." So see, Wasp gets back, and Wasp gets back. The government officials are there, and they want to know what's going on. And Wasp, being chairwoman, she rushes to the Vision. The Vision explains everything, connecting Isaac to take becoming chairman, doing all these things, and she's still kind of like, it's just sad. She's not bothered, but she's just sad about it. So they're trying to just close off the Avengers. Okay, they weren't, they're a little more upset with Hank Pym and when he kind of went off the deep end. For Vision, they kind of just like, let's go on, right? So Scarlet Witch says her goodbye. They say goodbye to Vision, and they go to debrief the Vision. And as I said, they go off. They're in there for who knows how long. And Scarlet Witch says, "What do you keep in Vision for so long?" I said, "Well, we still got to debrief him." He's like, "Any Avenger?" And she said, "What Avenger? We quit." And then she leaves, right? And that's how the Scarlet Witch and Vision miniseries starts, right? So they fix the ship, and at the same time, she realizes that the troll is doing something, but Gunther does something to hits hyperspace, and that causes Captain Marvel to become solid. And now she's stuck because her powers have never experienced something like that, so she can't really move around. And they got the drop on her, and now she's a few million light years away from home. So there's no way under her power she could get back. So we're just going to go through some subplots here, right? And right, so they go over what was going on, a bit about the Vision again, and she's just sort of stuck, right? She's been held up in a room now because they know that they tricked her, right? And she's like, "I should practice using my powers." So she starts to practice, and she's like, "Hey, I can still change to like a hologram form, but the only problem is there's no shadow." So you see here, there's no shadow underneath her in this shot. There's no shadow here, right? So then Levin comes in, and he wants to see if she wants some food, and she just tested out that would he be able to realize that she was a form of light, just a hologram. And he's like, "Oh, she's gonna turn." And then she goes back. It was a little struggle, but she did it, right? So, and I think that's it for this issue. So the Avengers, you see, I don't know, what's it? The Avengers they go to the Savage Land, right? So they're in the Savage Land. Now Captain Marvel, they finally someone gets over to the ship, and they're trying to still want her to join the crew. And when they get there, Levin tries to put the moves on Captain Marvel. She's not with it. And then Nebula comes in. And Nebula is going to be revealed to be a big deal. Well, you know her from the movie. She's Thanos' daughter in the movies. In the comic, she is Thanos' granddaughter. Or at least she claims to be, right? So she sees Captain Marvel, and she said, "Hey, let's see, I want to see what your ability is," but they're gone, or maybe not. So she tests, she shoots at her, and realizes that her powers are still there. And she's like, "Wow, I expected a Avenger to be resourceful, especially with that name." Right? And Captain Marvel's like, "I gotta watch out for this person." So she's like, "Hey, we're gonna go conquer what's left of the Skrull Empire," right? So there's something going on in the Savage Land. We're not going to get into it because it happens too quickly. So we're going to get to this main story of the Legacy of Thanos, and it comes in right at the end of the worst comic ever, Spider-Man versus Fire-Lord. Right? So the Avengers, they get back, make short work of Terminus. It went too quickly. I'm sorry. Right? It was something I can't really go over. And Avengers is still dealing with government things here. So this is where you see that Vision really needed to get the Vision quest that Byrne did needed to happen, right? And we have videos. We have a video talking about Vision Quest, right? So the Avengers realize, oh, something's going on with Firelord when they just got back, right? Now they should have been able to see this. Somehow. The Herald of Galactus is, you know, not fast enough to deal with Spider-Man, even though they travel light years in space. It's kind of ridiculous, but Spider Sense somehow works faster than that because I think some of the Marvel guys look at it as clairvoyance rather than a spider kind of having an awareness, and that's with I think the hair and the when you see a spider with like a that multiple eyes sort of thing. I think that's how they describe it, but they turned it into clairvoyance, so he gets a moment. But it's we get to see here. This is just David and Goliath done wrong, or I call it the what did I call it the adolescent power fantasy of having Spider-Man take down a what's the name. So that's as much as I'm going to, because ultimately the fight is over a pizza. It's over a pizza to do this David and Goliath thing. So I could go on for days. If you force me to review it, I'll do it, but can't. So Firelord been knocked out, but he hasn't sustained any lasting injuries, luckily for him. And then he wakes up and he's still crazed. Then, of course, Hercules, who's the strongest person on the planet, he hits them, and then that wakes him up, right? So Cap at the same time leaves things to Janet, but these stories, they kind of lean in that Cap kind of still leads while Wasp is there. Like she's a good leader, but I think I don't know, it's kind of weird. There's a point where you see a lot of Cap, but then Janet is the leader. So it's kind of weird, right? So and I didn't realize how stacked Big John Buscema drew Nebula, but she's pretty stacked here, right? And she's tall. And she has this outfit. I remember Paul Ryan keeping her stacked, but I guess it definitely came from Big John Buscema. And the only thing that tones it down is that Tom Palmer kind of gives her and Captain Marvel real clothing that aren't like the skin tight outfits. So you can see this, but it's not like looking like it's painted on. It looks like clothing, right? So let's keep going, right? So she shows them what Sanctuary 2. She's trying to sell Captain Marvel on joining them because Captain Marvel's acting like she wants to join them, but at the same time, they know it's a trick on both ends. Captain Marvel wants to trick them, and they were like, "Hey, either should be killed by the what's the name, or we can use her to eliminate them. Either way, it works out on our end. We get rid of her, or we get rid of the Skrulls." So she goes off. She sees this Skrull sort of defense thing, this defense grid over this planet. She's able to break through this thing, and they're like, "Wow, look what she just did." He said, "Well, now that they all broke down their defenses, I want to send a torpedo." So we have the Skrulls. She's on there with the Skrulls, and she sees the communication thing where she travels through communication. She blows the Skrulls. Don't know what's going on here, but this story is kind of the first story where the Skrulls. Well, we'll find out later. I'll keep that going, right? But it's something close to what the movie is, right? So she comes in there, they pull their guns out, and she's like, I gotta use your comm. I gotta call the Milky Way, right? So when she calls Milky Way, they hear the Avengers, they're not happy about that at all. So she she has to hold them back, and they realize that she, of course, turned on them. But of course, Nebula had her plan. She blows them up, right? And she's very happy with herself, right? And see, it's extra stacked. It's crazy, right? So here, this is what I was leading to, that the Avengers would be on the side of the Skrulls, and this is what we kind of see in Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. That this is, well, no, see, this is real Skrulls. So they're still Skrulls. They're not really keen on working with humans. They don't like humans at all, right? So now Nebula's like, extra stacked, and she's looking for survivors. She don't believe that she took them all out, but she's gonna keep looking, right? And she's forcing these guys to look, and she's like, hey, you might want her alive. And he's like, nope, I'm here for you, right? So she sends another big decimating thing against this planet, right? And they're all following controls. Now back on Earth, Fire Lord is now doing God's work, cleaning up toxic waste, and with his powers, he can do it without any sort of chemical backlash. The air is not that, he can destroys everything with his destruction, and it's just slag which can be repurposed or destroyed, right? So then Hercules, of course, makes it smaller and smaller. We see a little thing where She-Hulk, because the FF had lost their building, so they're living out of the Avengers Mansion. That's it. The Black Knight is using this speeder. He doesn't have his horse because Roger Stern decided that the horse couldn't sustain life with the wings, so took the wings off. It's kind of, I don't know if that was the best idea, but he's on this thing, and this would lead to this step with the Black Knight would lead to the members only Avengers, because he would have this, he would have a jacket, he'd lose his cape, he'd lose his helmet, and he would turn into Riggs from Lethal Weapon, right? So let's keep going, right? So the Avengers are there, and at the same time, they finally get Captain Marvel's message. She hasn't been heard from in days, and they're like, it cut off, so we got to get out there, right? So once they hear Century 2, Star Fox is all, ready to go, right? So they go, and Star Lord is going with them because he feels, some gratitude for helping him get out of his madness, right? And they go, there's no way the Avengers ship can get there. They said, no, we're going to go to a ship that Mentor left, Star Fox. So, and at the same time, they're on this planet with the Skrull leader, and this person has already made a connection. Like this, the Skrull, since in the Fantastic Four, Galactus ate the Skrull homeworld. So the Skrull Empire is in disarray, and different people are trying to, gain control. So this Skrull is trying to gain control using Nebula, right? Nebula, right? So then he tries to step up in stature, and she gets past his disguise, and this kind of shows you that some of the big bulky Skrulls are actually little wormy guys that bulk themselves up with their shape-shifting powers, right? That's a bit that they're not saying, but you should gather from it, right? And they're saying, hey, this weapon they have here will make this planet into the new Skrull homeworld, right? So their throne world, right? So they get there, and then once Star Lord sees this with the Skrulls, he's not too happy, right? So they're gonna make some sort of connection. Captain Marvel gets there. They don't want to bring Star Lord because he's a Herald of Galactus, and Fire Lord because he's a Herald of Galactus, and Fire Lord, they probably have nightmares of Galactus, and then the Skrulls are like, no, we don't want any Avengers over here, and say, hey, we gotta figure this out because we got this bigger threat, and who's that? In Nebula, right? So they go through the history of Galactus destroying their planet, their throne world, and then a war would start between the other worlds going against each other. Then Nebula comes out of nowhere, and she has her eyes on the Skrulls' throne, the throne in their empire. And then Captain Marvel comes in there. She does what she was doing, and as she knew that this thing was coming, she's able to, because she has to turn human to use the blasters, but she remembered that she can be in space for maybe as a human for a couple seconds to, come turn human and use her power, her blasting powers, which she does. It hits a planet and makes a big explosion, and they kind of disguise themselves to get away, right? But Fire Lord is like, no way, I am not with the Skrulls. I am totally against it. And it's like, no, she's worse, and they're like, nope, nobody's worse than the Skrulls. So and they're having this big long debate, and they're having this thing. They know that Nebula is the worst thing. They have no choice. And then next thing you know, they realize that Armada is coming after them, but they have he doesn't want the what's in the Armada to attack his planet. He's begging her, and she of course kills him. And he's saying that this guy died in battle, right? And show that they take no prisoners, right? So we get to the end. Sanctuary assault on sanctuary supposed to be 2, but it's not on there. It's revealing the stunning secret of Nebula, right? It's already revealed to you guys from the movie, but I just gave you what it was. And this was breakdowns. It was an issue that Byrne was supposed to ink. He did this cover. I'm not sure if this is the one, but Byrne said Roger Stern said here's an issue that you can finish of John Buscema's pencils. And Byrne said they were amazing, but he was too scared to mess them up. So he said he declined, right? So we get another, like Roger Stern is very keen on keeping you abreast of what's going on. So this comes through Firelord. Firelord says, hey, I'm totally against this Skrull thing, right? I'm vowing not to work with Skrulls, just like I've vowed to serve Galactus, right? And as she goes, she sees Xander, this other space area, and we realize she thinks it's the Skrulls, but it's actually Nebula, right? So that's going to send him. So back to the Armada, they're still making their plans out. They're trying to figure out things, and so they're going to get this big battle, this big space battle against Sanctuary 2. And I didn't see this picture here. That's a pretty decent picture of Nebula, right? And they say, we're going to ask Nebula to surrender, which of course gets her mad. And they're going to have this big fight. So we have this big space battle like Star Wars. And the Avengers are doing it Avengers style, where Hercules gets out in space, just tossing stuff at each other. We got Captain Marvel doing her thing. We got the Black Knight somehow tearing things up with his sword. And see, here we go again. We got Cap leading and talking to them what to do and whatnot at the same time. Now, I'm not against sharing leadership, but it's kind of counterproductive to have Cap. These are Wasp scenes, right? But anyway, what's the name? Nebula has her own plans because all this stuff is going on. And they can't drop their shields because they know Captain Marvel's going to join them, right? So then Firelord comes in there, but then they use and he starts attacking them at the same time. But of course, when Firelord comes, they going to use their what's the name? And they hit it with there's some sort of shielding, and they hit him with it, and he's like felled it to the floor, right? And all these guys somehow make it out, but Firelord is the one that gets bounced, right? And he runs into this person looking for the Avengers. Who could this be? Let's see, what is it? There's something on the cover. I just gave you a hint. You should be able to see what it is because it's going to turn this story south, right? So they're getting away, and Captain Marvel is struggling. She's struggling to get back, but she made it. And now, at the same time, they're ready to, once the other crew breaks in, they will have their cannon up, but they've been met by the mad Titan Thanos, right? And he's joined by the Avengers, so you can gather who this Thanos is, and they of course make short work of them. And Roos is up, and it was actually Captain America and a bunch of Skrulls that came and attack, and somehow they got through all of their thing pretty easy. And Skrulls are not interested in showing any kind of mercy. So Star-Lord is out of the fight, so he knows that Nebula is the Beyonder knows that Nebula is the bad person. So he's gonna, I guess, get involved. So while this is going on, we still have this fight, and the Avengers are doing is taking get all of Nebula's people and finishing them off, right? So while the last few are trying to get their getaway, here comes Star Fox, right? And then he said he claims sanctuary over it and takes her blasters, and said that's built by her brother. And he said, but that was built by her grandfather. What? And that surprise gets him knocked out, right? But at the same time, the Beyonder comes, and the Beyonder ruins everything. Beyonder just takes these guys away, right? So that's it. That's how it ends. That's how it ends. It says that the intergalactic adventure heats up in Avengers 14, but at the same time, I think that's going to be the last. I already did the war to end all Skrulls, so that's going to lead to that. So I have that video up there. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. But it ends on like Roger Stern only got to do basically one story with it. I think. I don't know if I don't think outside of the Infinity Gauntlet, but she's gonna become a big thing. So I think I'm gonna do. I got one video coming out with her, and then I'll have another one that gets disrupted. I got one that's no. All of these Nebula stories get disrupted. I have this one. I have the Cross Time Kings that gets disrupted, and then I have one that's another big one that's coming up. But yeah, that's what happened. It was going so well, right? But let's stop this and come back for more when you get a chance. Spin a rack out.